Welcome back to Ride JBI. This is JB. Today we finished up a suspension revalve on this 2022 Kawasaki KX450SR. For 2022, the Kawasaki 450SR model came with KYB suspension instead of the standard Showa suspension that came on the regular KX450 models. An easy way to tell between the two is to look at the fork caps. You can see the fork cap is black and it is recessed. Whereas the Showa fork caps are green. Instead of this feature being recessed, it is actually protruding above the cap just a little bit. That's one quick, easy way to tell. Also, you can kind of tell by the upper fork tubes are a different shade of color than the a lighter gray or silver color that the OEM Showa forks are for it. So the 22 Kawasaki 450 SR featured a lot of praise with the Kawasaki suspension, with the KYB suspension compared to the stock Showa stuff, because a lot of riders felt like it had better hold up during aggressive riding and during high impact moments. So think landing from jumps. Much of that has to do with the leaf spring style mid valve that this fork has. That type of mid valve we incorporate into the Showa setups that we build for the Kawasaki's. So that way we can make use of that nice piece of tech in other brand forks. You can read more about that at ridejbi.com. The item is called the JBI Titanium Leaf Spring. There's a separate product page for that. But there also is a product page for the Kawasaki KX450s. It's called the JBI Suspension Kawasaki KX450 Pro Fork Revalve. Again, that is referencing the Showa fork though. So let's get into more details about this KYB fork. This KYB fork is a 48 millimeter lower tube that is 1 mil smaller than the 49 millimeter Showa tube. It features obviously KYB internals, which are very similar to the Showas, but they have some minor similarities. I recently posted another video of these forks apart and where I kind of detail the differences between the two. These forks are revalved to our JBI suspension motocross spec. We also decreased the spring rate just a small amount to match the rider's weight. The rider is just over 160 pounds in gear. So the stock springs are a little much for them. So we went down just one rate on the forks and just one rate on the shock. So essentially the 250F spring rates are what you would find inside of these forks. Now these forks are very similar to the Kawasaki KX250, which features the KYB suspension on it. An interesting note is that even though this inner tube is 48 millimeters and the Showa one is 49, meaning it's bigger, the outer diameter of the upper tube is the same. Specifically, I'm referencing the lower clamping area and the upper clamping area, because these forks will fit a non-SR model as well. So whether you're using KYB 48 mil forks or Showa 49 mil forks, either one will fit inside of the OEM triple clamps, whether you want to put those on a KX250 or a KX450. Recently, we released our JBI Pro Perch Titanium 3.0. After 4 years of development and testing, we have finally released it. Here it is right here. Quite a big upgrade and departure from our previous version and design. As you can see, there are no longer shims bolted to the outside of it. Instead, the shims have been machined into the body itself. Very cool design, a lot sleeker than the previous one that we had, and more efficient as well. What I mean by efficient is when this perch engages the oil inside of the fork, it helps slow it down more efficiently than the previous version. There's a separate product page, again, on ridejbi.com that details everything about our JBI Pro Perch Titanium 3.0. There's a lot of text describing how the product works, a lot of images, and also videos as well. Now in 2023, when Kawasaki released the 450 SR model, again, that came with Showa suspension on it. And what they did was they actually firmed up the stock settings a little bit all the way around. So that way those forks would have a more similar feel to these KYB versions. However, it seems like a lot of people still preferred the KYB setup over the Showa ones. Again, that is a lot of the reason why we adapt one of the components of these forks, again, that leaf spring style mid-valve, into our Showa forks. KYB is the one that came up with that style of mid-valve. They've been fine-tuning it since they first released it publicly in, I think, 2012 on the Kawasaki KX450. And then they re-released it in 2018 on the Yamaha YZ450. And over that time, they've been really fine-tuning it and getting a better understanding of how it works compared to the previous traditional mid-valve setting. While it is a little more complex to set up and time-consuming, it is much more tunable, much more responsive, and much improved in providing mid-speed compression damping. I think it's really cool that Kawasaki did the KYB suspension in 2022 and then the Showa suspension in 2023. I like seeing the manufacturer try things and not just be married to one setting and or one brand. It's cool for the public to be able to see what the same bike can feel like with different suspension components on it, such as somebody could have bought a 21 Kawasaki, rode it with the Showa suspension, then bought in a 2022 Kawasaki SR or maybe ridden a friend's SR, and it'd just be a fun way for them to see the difference different brands suspension can feel and different settings can do. Ride JBI has been testing, tuning, and developing suspension settings for these KYB SSS forks since they initially came out in 2006, back on the Yamaha YZ and YZF models. So these forks have been out for quite some time, which is a good thing. It means we've had a lot of time to do testing, tuning, and development of these forks. Another reason why they're probably so commonly liked and preferred. The longer a product is out, the longer the time you have to develop and tune settings. In comparison, the Showa 49mm twin chamber forks, those first came on a bike in 2018 on the Suzuki RMZ 450. Sorry, I take it back. They first came on a bike in 2017 on the Honda CRF 450. And we have been refining those forks since. They're quite good, very competitively performing, and we've got some great specs for them. However, those have only been out for, what is that? About 6 years now, compared to, God, let's see, 2006, 10, about 20 years. No, about 17 years or so. So having that much extra time of development really pays off. I personally would ride either fork setup at Ride JBI. If you've watched any of our videos, you see that we do a lot of testing, and we do a lot of testing of our own products against each other. That way we can find what fork is working well, figure out the shortcomings of another fork setup we're working with, and then figure out how do we resolve that shortcoming in order to improve that fork. By doing that, it makes our settings very even among all the different types of suspension that we have and different brands that we can build. So again, personally, I would ride either one. I don't really have a preference. These Showa forks, we've been getting some really, really good settings on. We've been doing a lot of testing on those lately. And a lot of reasons is because it is still a newer fork compared to these. We've done so much testing, tuning, and development time on these KYBs that we can kind of let these just sit in the back for a while because it is already well known and well proven how good the KYB forks work and also how well they work with some JBI mods as well. Ride JBI has tested, tuned, and developed many other suspension settings for all the various types of off-road riding, motocross, supercross, arena cross, and freestyle motocross. If you'd like Ride JBI to do your suspension, please give us a call or send us an email. We can discuss the year, make, and model bike that you have, which options are available, and which setup would be most advantageous for you. All JBI suspension services and parts can be found at ridejbi.com.